I now call to order the North Carolina Able Program Board of Trustees meeting, May 7th, 2026. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here in person and virtually. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the North Carolina flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State of loyalty and faith. Thank you. Administrative announcements. If anyone wishes to make a public comment, sign up or email Patty Hall at patty.hall@nctreasurer.com. That's PATTI.HALL. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be posted online with the other board materials. We'll be taking roll call by name for all votes. Unless there is an objection, a motion and a second will be counted as yes votes. Board members, if you must leave the meeting at any point, please announce your departure. If you return, please announce your return as well. These items must be recorded for the meeting minutes. Likewise, please state your name before speaking. Finally, texts or other recorded communications between board members during the meeting, even on personal phones or public records, to the extent that they concern the meeting. As a reminder, for those online, please mute your phone until you need to speak. This will help limit background noise and outside distractions. Very much appreciated. Secretary, please call the roll.
Treasurer Briner.
Here.
Katie Boskins.
Present.
Claudine Burns. Chris Egan.
I'm here.
Chris Wall.
I'm here.
And Marquita Robertson.
I'm here.
We have a forum. Thank you. All right. Please take a moment to review the agenda. Does anyone present have an actual, potential, or the appearance of a conflict in any of these matters? Okay, hearing none. We're going to move on to swearing in our newest board member, Chris Wall. Although it's the second meeting, we're going to actually swear him in. All right, so thank you for being here. This way.
Do you mind scooting over that way?
Yes, I might.
Yeah. Center it up.
All right. Do you, Chris Wall, solemnly affirm that you will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Constitution and laws of North Carolina not inconsistent therewith, and that you will faithfully discharge duties of your office as trustee of the North Carolina Able Program Board? So help you God. I do. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. All right. Mr. Wall does bring extensive government experience, serving as a senior staffer for Senator Richard Burr, who is a key bipartisan leader in the passage of the ABLE Act in 2014. Mr. Wall was also an aide to Congresswoman Virginia Foxx and Congressman Robert Hayes, currently a partner with EQB Strategic, which helps clients with public policy consulting and government affairs. Welcome again, Chris. Happy to have you. You're welcome to say anything or nothing at all, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, no, I just appreciated being here as a father of a child that has an ABLE account and being in the very beginning of this program. This is a dream come true. So thank you for having me.
Appreciate your service. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 6, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
This is Katie Boskin. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Katie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. Please call the roll.
Treasurer Briner.
Aye.
Chris Egan.
Aye.
Marquita Robertson.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you. All right, we'll move over to the administrative update with Jeff Hancock.
Great. Before I jump into my update, for those who can see the room, we do have a new face in the room. Trevor Parrish is the new attorney supporting the NC ABLE program. Trevor comes to us from a background in legislative policy. He's been with the Department of State Treasurer for the last 3.5 years and worked with our investment management division. So he's got a lot of good investment background as well. So welcome, Trevor. Would you like to say any comments or words?
Very briefly, just that it is a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you. So board, I wanted to give everyone an update on the National Able Alliance. There's been a lot of activity that's occurred over the last 6 months. And so some of this may be a little bit redundant from the email I sent out in early March, but I felt like it was important to be captured for the minutes. Currently there are 19 states in the National Able Alliance. We have 3 states that are going to be exiting the alliance. So the alliance will still have 16 state members. So let me talk about each of the states that are exiting the alliance. So back when we were going to go out and do an RFP last year, Pennsylvania, which is the largest state in the alliance, made the decision that they wanted to go out on their own. They felt like they were large enough that this would allow for them to make their own decisions, make any changes that they wanted to without having to conform to the alliance. All that kind of made sense to us. And they're going to be moving their program from a census over to Vestwell, who is the other major player in the able market. And then early this year, the Arkansas legislature passed a statute that all of the investments under the state treasurer's office must exclude China. And the current investments within the National Able Alliance do not conform to that statute. Arkansas is going to stay with the census, but they will have to be separated out so that they can have their own investments that comply with their recently passed legislation. And then the third state is the state of Illinois. At the time that we did the full alliance RFP last year, they were a strong proponent to move to Vestwell. As you all know, the alliance as a majority voted to stay with the census. And so earlier this year, Illinois went out, they performed their own RFP, and as a result of that, they have made the decision to move their able program to Vestwell as well. Why that's important is the Illinois State Treasurer's Office was the facilitating state in the National Able Alliance. And in that role, they actually contracted with the census under a master agreement, and then every other state would sign on to that and adopt that master agreement language within each state's own implementation agreement. For the alliance to stay viable, we needed another state to kind of fill that role. We are fortunate that the state of Iowa has agreed to step up and become the lead state for the alliance. And the remaining states in the alliance did vote unanimously to accept Iowa in that role. So as I was going to be taking that role, and they're currently working with the census in Illinois to transfer and do all the legal stuff behind the scenes, I felt it was important for the board to kind of know what the board's options are in terms of what we do with our program. So I kind of put those in the email. As we see it, the first option would be for us to remain a member of the National Able Alliance as it's newly constituted, and sign a new agreement under Iowa as the lead state. That is our preferred option and what was outlined in the memo. We also could sign a individual contract with the census for the same exact services that are rendered today, but there may be some pricing consequences for going out on our own based on our size and not being able to leverage the other alliance states. We could choose to exit the National Able Alliance and follow Illinois and Pennsylvania to Vestwell. There's reasons why we don't believe that is the best option for us. And so that is not what we would like to see happen. And the last option is not really an option in my mind, but certainly it is truly an option. We could transfer our program to another state program, and then any new account owners that come to us, we could simply refer them to that state. So I know I've laid out a lot there. Again, I wanted you to know what you as the board, what we feel like the options are for the program's future. And we felt like, having the board kind of, well, one, we would recommend staying with the alliance under Iowa, but we felt like this would be a good opportunity for the board to kind of vote and reaffirm that position.
Jeff, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I seem to remember that when we were looking at the best well versus a census, that we got to the conclusion that a major component that our participants rely on is the checking account, and that's not available in the option that Pennsylvania and Illinois went out with best well, correct?
That's correct. So they have a prepaid debit card instead. Whereas we have the checking account option. So with the prepaid debit card, the account owner would have to actively transfer money from their Able account onto that prepaid card. We felt like that would be disruptive because people can elect to have their contributions go directly into the checking account. And that's where a lot of our account owners use that to pay their daily living expenses, and they're writing checks for that. So we just felt like this would, staying with the alliance and staying with the census with the checking account option would be least disruptive.
So given that there's at least that one reason, we know that our participants, the feedback we have anecdotally and otherwise is that they like that option.
That's
have an
correct.
option so there's a reason to not move to best well or follow the other members. Is there a reason we should move? Or is there any advantage that Illinois and Pennsylvania have that are now gained by doing something different that we would gain if we were to do something different?
So what we saw when we did the RFP, when we saw that we felt like the technology was slightly better, but probably not enough to warrant the disruption to the program and moving. But it's slightly ahead of where census is today, but a census is making great strides in that area.
Is there any downside to staying with a census and having Iowa as the lead state? Is there anything that we lose, or do we have to renegotiate with the census because we have a smaller pool?
The only thing that we are seeing is some of the investment managers that we have today. They do have some investment minimums, and with the two largest asset states leaving the alliance, we may be forced out of certain investments. But we're currently looking into that and trying to address that.
Does the net cost to the alliance go up by virtue of those large assets leaving?
We have not been told that. And the census is on the line, so they can speak to that as well.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kim Shockley from Census. I do have my colleague Paul Supay from our investment team on as well. We wouldn't have to move out of assets, but possibly into different share classes. And even with that, like Jeff was saying, based on other assets that North Carolina and your partners within the alliance have in these investment options in your 529s, for instance, we're allowed specifically with Vanguard to aggregate all the assets that a state has. And up until this point, we've used the assets of Illinois, but we are going to be changing that to a different state partner. So we'll give more details once we've had those conversations with Vanguard, but what we have recommended to date would not increase cost. The plan is that until the end of the contract that we have with the National Label Alliance, we are keeping to the fees and costs that you have reached through rate points to date, and then we'll revisit that when it's time to negotiate a different contract. If Paul wants to say anything else on top of what I just added, or if you guys have any other questions for myself or Paul, I'm happy to answer those.
Yeah, no, all I would add to that, Kim, is that we are working with some of the states right now, putting together kind of a proposed a lineup and allocations and things like that to make sure that there's the least amount of disruption to this plan and putting forth the best lineup possible. Expenses, performance, risk, all kind of included in the proposed lineup.
Katie, I think you might have had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I was wondering, and forgive me for not knowing this already, but does the National Alliance states, do they recommit on an annual basis? Is it every 5 years? And the reason I'm asking that is I'm wondering, we make a decision today, are we going to revisit this in a year or 2 years? And so, I'd like to make a long-term choice about it as opposed to continuing to come back.
Yes, so Katie, when we sign on under our implementation agreement, it runs concurrent with the master agreement. And as Kim mentioned, runs through 2028. So the Able Alliance in 2028 will have to make a decision whether to extend out or go back out to RFP.
And it does have a contract extension built in,
Yes.
if that's the choice. Yep.
And there's no indication that any of the other states are planning to flee to Vestwell and I'll just be frank, I think I'm in favor of taking staff's recommendation on option number 1 here. Stay in the alliance, let Iowa lead. I just want to make sure that we have a full picture of what's going to happen.
Yeah, and for the states that I talk to on a regular basis, there is no indication of that. I can't know for certain if someone's holding that close to the vest, but we do not foresee that at this time.
And I can ditto what Jeff stated.
So maybe framing that question in a slightly different way. What is the scale of assets at which it makes sense to be independent?
So just to kind of give you an example, and I think it's here in the back, but I think Pennsylvania was around 170 million. We're only around 46 million.
Yep.
So certainly for us, I don't think it makes sense because we certainly benefit, as Kim was mentioning, from some of the asset break points and some of the account numbers to break points. And so I think we, as a standalone program, are too small, and we can certainly see price increase.
Sure, but I think Michigan is 88 million or so. And so I guess the question is a generic question because that's going to apply to all these states.
Yeah, and I don't know where, I guess I don't know what that break point would be, if you will. I don't think there's really a hard line in the sand where it makes sense and where it doesn't. I think it just depends on what the program wants to do and what level of independence. Because again, we do as a group, conform when it comes to changing operations and updating forms, having investments. We have to have the 16 states conform to that versus being out on your own. You have the ability to make those own decisions and changes as you see fit.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments on this topic?
Mr.
Okay.
Treasurer,
Yes.
this is Katie Boskin. I'd like to move to approve staff's recommendation of using option 1.
Thank you, Katie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. Call the roll, please.
All right, Treasurer Briner,
Aye.
Chris Egan,
Aye.
and Marquita Robertson.
Aye.
Marquita? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go over to Christie.
No videos this time.
No, no videos. So this is Christy. I'm just going to give you an update on communications and events and marketing and things that we've done to really push the NC ABLE program forward. As Jeff mentioned, we're small in size. We're also small in staff size. So we do a really good job together to bring it up to the assets and the accounts that we have right now. If you want to go ahead and forward. So I love including this eligibility survey. It's kind of anecdotal. It does just give us an insight into who is really interested in opening an account. And it really has stayed very even between people that are opening an account for themselves and a family member that's opening an account. So I think that's pretty impressive. And again, the same with the account eligibility. Obviously, there's 3 things that you have to criteria that you have to meet in order to even open an account. And again, that's pretty even across the board. And on the next slide, this is participation in an employer 401k. I think this is kind of exciting because the 401k participation has gone up. And what that means is that those individuals, well, if they participate in the 401k, they cannot do the able to work addition, but they can still contribute the annual amount to an ABLE account. So that is just a really wonderful thing to see that we're getting a few more people that are working and that actually are saving for their future and using this as a supplemental vehicle. Next slide. Just to touch on, again, small team, mighty moves. When I first started in this role, we would have maybe 3 or 4 events, webinars, talking kind of things. This has grown so substantially, thanks to Kristen, Jeff. We work as a team and we're not only doing events, we're doing recurring events. So DHHS has become a really great partner. A lot of organizations have become a great partner. Recurring annual events where we're seeing more and more people. And I think our name is actually out there now, where it really wasn't before. So that's pretty impressive. And of course, we have a list of upcoming events that of course are going to build over the summer. We're really in our busy time right now. Next slide.
You don't want to point out my wonderful picture.
Okay, yeah, because that actually was a really great event. That is a picture of Jeff. He did a really great event up at UNC Greensboro. That was really a collaboration of a lot of different places, and that was a pretty impressive event. That was very good. And that's a wonderful picture of him speaking in front of the crowd.
You can't see me, but anyway.
And our web stats coincide with everything that we're doing outside, inside webinars. They continue to go up. Since our last meeting through March 31st, we had nearly 50,000 unique views to our website. And those are kind of the pages where the people are going, and they're doing exactly what we want them to do. We want them to know how to enroll. We want them to understand the benefits and how to open an account. And we want them to understand investments and their options within an NC ABLE account. Next slide.
For a second,
Yeah.
because I was just a little confused by something. These locations on the bottom right, those are where people are viewing the page from.
Yes.
What's going on in Boardman and Oregon?
Well, that's actually a place where a very large company is located. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at some of the data, when you look at the 100 counties,
yeah,
we rank them in order of accounts. I think our out of state accounts ranks like 3rd or 4th.
Oh, okay.
So.
And that's good news. I mean, I feel like we have a strong reputation for the way that we run our program. So, we can have anyone open an NC ABLE account from anywhere.
Yeah.
Next slide. Yeah. So last board meeting, we definitely had a call out from the board to go ahead and highlight some of that Medicaid recovery and that fantastic stuff that happened last year. So we did. We have an article on there. We have alerts just to make sure that people are seeing that. We, of course, featured that on social media. I did want to include just what people are using to actually access the website and our digital things and where they're coming from, whether it's a referral, direct, or an organic search. And again, I wanted to include last year, we had started an employer toolkit page where where employers can go to find out how this may be used as a benefit, and views are up 160% on that page alone. Along with all of this new stuff, we kind of revamped the webinar presentation that we deliver to include more things that answer the questions that we've been getting throughout the process, expanding a little bit on investments and other things. And I think it's been a very successful update there. Next slide. And really, I mean, that is my presentation for right now. I think we're just making such great growth with such a small team, and there really is no stopping it now. We really have the momentum to continue in a really positive way.
Circling back to your Oregon comment, I think one of the decisions that the program made early on was to be open to all U.S. residents. And I think that's important because you might have somebody who lives here today and opens an account and then moves for whatever reason, they can keep their account, where the states that are only open to their residents have to close that account and reopen a new one. So that would then add to other locales across the country.
Not necessarily important.
Can I ask a question just on what is our growth rate? Are we flat? Are we growing? What's
our accounts?
Yeah.
Oh, we're good. I mean,
so
Let me provide you with some stats on that during my portion of the presentation.
But just for a quick answer, we're seeing about 60 or so on average new accounts per month.
and keep in mind, we don't have, I know you were talking about the allocation and things like that. We're operating with negative budget and negative people power, so it kind of is really more organic. And I think that's where these events and these presentations and just that outreach kind of helps. They become our voice.
And are we a separate line item in the budget, or we derive funding from another line item?
We are a separate line.
Separate line.
It's about a 200,000 general fund appropriation to the ABLE program. Policy directive from the General Assembly since the inception of the program has been to attempt, the desire is to make us self-sufficient, supported off the fees paid by the account owners. But we are a very long way from being able to make up the $200,000 that would take for us to start telling General Assembly to turn off the appropriation. Very long way, at least. What we're now, decade, 15 years or so, at least longer, 20, 25. At the current rates of growth. So it's not, we don't see it likely in the near term that we would be saying no to the appropriation.
We'd say yes to more.
But we're the only ones in the state, I'm sure. Thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Great job. All right, let's move on to the team from Census who's on the line. Kim and Paul.
Hi, thank you all. Appreciate your time today. I'm definitely excited to see the growth in North Carolina. One thing to keep in mind is that the way the Alliance is set up, and I think this is one of the perks of the Alliance, is that all of the accounts that are open under North Carolina's ABLE plan belong to North Carolina. So if you take Arkansas as an example, they have to pull out of the Alliance. They're bringing all their accounts with them, whereas some other plans that are multi-state, the lead state owns all of the plans. So if you were to leave, the plans that you had created under that umbrella would stay there and you'd start fresh. So the work you guys are doing is on behalf of North Carolina residents, is definitely going to stay and benefit North Carolina. So just wanted to point that out. One other thing I wanted to point out before we go into the first page of our presentation is since our last meeting on January 1st, the age of onset has increased from 26 as a maximum age to 46. So that's opening up entirely new groups of people who may require an ABLE plan and possibly for different reasons than are those who currently utilized it up until January 1st. So I think through all of the outreach you're doing and then being able to reach that larger group of people, you guys are seeing some real growth in the first quarter of 2026. So if you want to move to page 3. Thank you. So this is a growth in assets by month. There was a slight dip between February and March. We've seen continued growth since then, but even with that slight dip, the assets have increased year over year over 32%. So there are about $45,207,979 in North Carolina's ABLE as of March 31st. Next slide. This is the contributions by month. And as you can see, we go back a year and a quarter. So January is typically our highest contribution amount. People are meeting the maximum contributions for the year. They might not have been able to contribute anymore in the year prior based on meeting those goals, gifting. So a lot of things make January a very big year for us. But as you can see, contributions were almost $2 million this year, where they were closer to about $1,250,000 same time last year. So we're seeing a lot of growth in contributions based on the same time year prior. Next slide. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. Next slide. Excuse me. Can you go back one? I was looking at something different. It was an error on my own part. One more? Great, thank you. All right, so these are our contributions by type. If you look at 2024 and 2025, EBT is definitely the largest by far amongst all the categories for how people are contributing to these plans. But it does seem, and this was the same for last year, same time for the first quarter, checks are higher for the first quarter of the year. Once again, going back to what I was discussing before with gifting, with people trying to meet those maximum contributions, it's not always going to be the account owner in that case or coming from an outside account of the AI or AO. So outside of the first quarter, EBT seems to be the highest as far as how people are contributing. But like I said, for the first quarter, year over year, check seems to be how people are doing that. So people are able to use these to save their own funds, but it does seem they're also using these to be able to receive gifts and be able to receive funds from friends and loved ones. Next slide. Contributions by age group, staying pretty typical year over year, where the 20 to 29 group is where most of the contributions are being made. Definitely hoping that that's just a time period where people are working, maybe earning some of their highest income. And we are seeing trends to meet last year's contributions, if not exceed. Next slide. As with our own bank accounts, when we see higher contributions, we often see higher distributions as well. So as you can see, specifically looking at February of this year, that high amount going in January saw higher distributions in February. And as I was saying, one thing to keep in mind is you reach a point with ABLE where you're no longer allowed to contribute. Sometimes you might meet those maximum amounts. And if you meet them and before the end of the year before, being able to contribute again in January, you may be able to start having that purchasing power again that possibly you were lacking for a short time. Next slide. Thank Thank you. This is just distributions by type. Withdrawals to a bank, withdrawals at a bank are the highest. I think people were mentioning before the checking account product is very popular. About 25% of assets, I think, for North Carolina Able are in the checking product. And that is how people are typically making their withdrawals as well. The next is a qualified withdrawal to an account owner. So having those funds sent directly to the account owner. Next slide. Our distributions chart is the same bell as our contributions as far as age group. 20 to 29, we're still seeing the highest distributions. Last quarter was the first time people who had their age of onset between 26 and 45. It's the first time that they began contributing. So we might start seeing some changes to this curve over time. So we'll just keep a lookout for that. Next slide. I think this one, based on some questions you guys had earlier, is one of our most interesting slides. As you can see, for 2025, our total new accounts were 733. For the first 3 months of 2026, it was 425. So we've already opened more than 50% of the accounts we opened for the total year last year. And if you just look at quarter over quarter, we've doubled the amount of accounts we opened between January and March in 2026 as we had in 2025. So I think you're seeing more outreach from your staff. You're seeing a larger group of people that's able to take in the information about Able and then be able to open an account. I think all boats are rising with the tide because we're seeing we're also seeing quite a few 0 to 25 people opening these accounts. But like I said, the more we're getting the word out there, the more we're going to capture from all groups. But having this new audience to promote the product to, I think we're already seeing an impact to North Carolina's Able. Next slide. So this is accounts by disability type. Developmental disorders has always been our highest. Keeping in mind, developmental disorders are considered from birth. So we do, or during childhood, both that and congenital. So keeping that in mind, we're actually already seeing an increase to psychiatric disorders. People who fall into the other category for North Carolina specific to those two. Throughout our ABLE plan, we're seeing nervous disorders and respiratory. So just things to keep in mind, we're starting to see different groups that you guys might decide to start promoting to try to get in front of influential groups, to get in front of entities that possibly care for people who fall in different categories than we've been looking for up to date. Next slide. This is just the accounts by eligibility, whether SSI, SSDI, Social Security, compassionate allowance, or a doctor's diagnosis. The SSI is consistently remaining how most people find their eligibility. This is another place where we're looking to see if we're going to see any differences as far as how people became eligible depending on the age in which they had that eligibility onset. As we look at this and the types of disorders, we're also seeing, and this isn't on one of these slides, I just thought it was an interesting piece of information. More people are opening these accounts as self accounts now that we're seeing this age of onset increase. So for North Carolina, the past 2 years, 2024, 2025, about 25 to 30% of ABLE account holders were self accounts. But so far for the beginning of 2026, it's closer to 50%. So people who are able to care for their own funds, but have an eligible disability is just a new, larger group than we've been seeing up to date. And once again, as we're looking into ways to market the program, it just kind of opens up, it might just open up different doors for us. Next slide. This is just a breakdown of your ABLE states. Anyone who had questions earlier about account sizes, this is all of the states that are currently within the National ABLE Alliance. Any
Kim,
questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before you go forward, I'm wondering, so this is a slide that you include in every deck that every quarter. And so I have to believe that there's data that goes back. Would it be possible to see the growth over time? And the way that the states have shifted and fluctuated so that we can have a sense of who our peer group is, are we outperforming, underperforming?
Sure. I can definitely take a look at that for you. One thing to keep in mind is some states do have full-time staff and appropriations that are dedicated to their ABLE plan. You can see it as a differentiator, and some are kind of adding to their staff over time. Majority of the states, I think, are in a similar case to North Carolina, where or even less, where they have a completely unfunded mandate, and often it's someone who's helping maintain their 529, or another plan within the office is assisting with their ABLE plan. And I think that's another place where having a group of states come together to be able to assist each other, to be able to talk over different federal and state law, even things like changes you made to your Medicaid. I think other states were available, and other states have probably been reaching out to you now too. So it kind of helps you have that group of people that is working through some of the same situations you are, if you don't have full-time staff dedicated. But yeah, we can take a look and see kind of how these states have fluctuated.
Well, and just
over time.
trend over time. I mean, I think I joined this board in 21, and I know that our assets have more than doubled since that time. Pennsylvania has grown leaps and bounds, and like you point out, they're probably one of the states with appropriations and a full-time staff.
Right.
I'm just looking at the trends, and really to Chris's question that he posed earlier on the growth in our numbers, and how we look relative to the states that are staying with us in the alliance.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely do that. Jeff, I'll speak to you. I'll reach out to you with feedback.
Yep.
Any other questions before Paul moves into the investments? All right, thank you all. Really appreciate your time today and appreciate the questions.
All right, thanks, Kim. So we can move forward one slide. Perfect. So we will start here looking at the NC ABLE asset allocations and the asset growth and plan level performance here. So as has come up before, what is the past growth of the plan? We obviously ended NC ABLE ended the first quarter with $45.2 million. That's growth of 5.8% quarter over quarter. It's also growth of 32.3% year over year, and that's been fairly consistent. I looked back last year and it was still around 33% asset growth. A lot of that asset growth, of course, has been, very good equity markets, especially over the last 3 years. North Carolina generally has among the higher allocations towards the more equity-heavy portfolios. And so when we've had these strong equity markets, we've seen the market really kind of help with the asset growth in these portfolios. Over the last quarter, the equity markets did struggle. We saw the U.S. Have a rise in kind of inflationary metrics, which in turn kind of lowers the possibility of further Fed rate cuts. So that has an effect on equities. We also saw the U.S. kind of enter into a military conflict with Iran. That, of course, limited oil supplies from the Middle East, which caused international equities to falter a little in March. Small and mid cap US equities still produced positive returns for the quarter, and even international equities over the full quarter did produce positive returns. So it's really just kind of the US equity side, and it's really the large mega caps where valuations were considered very high that had that negative performance that hit these kind of portfolios at a portfolio level. You do see kind of negative returns for the quarter for those higher aggressive, moderately aggressive growth portfolios. So it was those kind of moderate, or it was the mega caps and large cap technology companies in particular pulling back from those kind of AI rallies or so due to higher valuations. On the bond side, we saw kind of a rise in yields throughout the yield curve. Even with interest rates rising, we did see U.S. bonds kind of outperform international bonds for the quarter. International bonds have really been buoyed of late by kind of that weakening dollar once March came along and we actually went to war with Iran. That had a bigger effect on those international countries. So more of the energy started to come from the U.S. With kind of 20% of the world's oil being blocked off from that Strait of Hormuz. That really makes the currency get stronger in the U.S. And so that actually had a weaker outlook on the international bond side. So U.S. bonds did outperform international bonds there, and we saw shorter duration bonds really outperforming those longer duration bonds with that kind of rise in interest rates. And the last part here is the money market. We have seen money markets be reduced in yield over the past year or so. That's with kind of the 6 rate cuts that we've had since September of 2024. So we've seen those yields really come down. Those rate cuts did not take place over the last quarter. So we actually saw yields start to build up, especially with kind of the conflict in the Middle East. We'll move into this a little bit more as we move ahead to we get the equity side here, underlying equity side. So as you see here, kind of that Vanguard Total Stock Index is the large cap, mid cap, and small cap U.S. equities all together. So they got, we see that negative return there. That is due to those technology company valuations being very high and kind of the energy prices really spiking from the conflict in the Middle East. The international equities were still kind of rolling fairly well through February, but blocking that Strait of Hormuz really kind of brought them back in line or so. They were up about 9, 10, 11% earlier in the quarter, and they got taken back quite a bit as we moved through the end of March. And the same kind of scenarios with that the real estate REIT performance there. It was up about 10% due to all those kind of Fed rate cuts, bringing down mortgages. We got to March, and there was a lot more inflation talk, where those Fed rate cuts would slow down or stop. We might not get another one through 2026. And so we saw those mortgage rates start to go back up. And so we saw a pullback in the REITs market. So it did end the quarter with a healthy 3.5% return and positive. So we did see a number of different areas within the equity markets that we still had kind of positive returns for the quarter, but the allocations are definitely more heavily invested in kind of the U.S. equities. And so the overall performance for these funds were generally negative for the quarter. And the last slide here is the underlying bond slide here. So as we mentioned, kind of interest rate rises for all bonds across the yield curve. Inflation protected bonds and shorter duration bonds were kind of the best performers for the quarter. Money market funds did well in comparison to other bonds, Those, of course, will be kind of the shortest duration bonds that we see. But we did see some impact due to kind of rise in interest rates. So money markets are a little bit different. It's so short. It's, basically a 3-month bond that you'll see that the rollover pretty quick. So when you see rising interest rates, that just kind of impacts the yield you're going to get on markets. That kind of does help the return when you have rising interest rates. On bonds, it's generally the exact opposite. When you have rising interest rates, that's generally going to have a negative impact on performance. That is especially true the longer duration of the bond. So that's why you kind of got shorter duration bonds outperforming there. And we talked about the international bond position. It was really kind of that the weakening of the dollar really helped for a long term through the fourth quarter and through part of the first quarter of 2026. That pullback happened once we kind of went to war in Iran, and the dollar actually strengthened. That kind of brought a negative return on international bonds. High yield bonds, basically moderate for the quarter, but if you look out to the full year, has been among the strongest positions within our fixed income allocations. As they typically go as the kind of equity markets go as well. They're based on risks. So as the equity markets get a little bit more volatile, you'll see credit risks rise. And so this is a area of the income allocation that we'll have to be more wary of looking into the near future. If equities continue to be a little more volatile, then high yield is a place that we might have to retract a little bit of allocation from. International bond might be a place that we would replace that with, that has a lot of the similar kind of correlation effects that we can get to regular U.S. Intermediate term bonds. So as we look at the allocations and present some allocations to the kind of changing National Labor Alliance, these are two of the areas within the fixed income area, fixed income allocation that we'll be particularly looking at. Any questions on any of the underlying funds or the portfolio performance?
Just to make sure I understand, on 15, the assets that are listed there, those are the assets of the full alliance.
Those are of the full alliance there, yes.
Thank you.
It had grown from page 5 to page.
Right.
Yeah. And North Carolina is the number one state for having the highest equity allocation. So they're up near 57% or so in those top kind of 4 portfolios that have the higher allocation. As you see here, this is the market values and the percent of plan values there are the whole alliance altogether. And that kind of comes out to about 46, 47% for those equities. So you can see the overall consortium is a lot more conservative than what you'll get within the North Carolina Able Plan in particular.
And if it's not too much trouble, maybe next time we get together, we can look at just the North Carolina assets instead, so we know where they're allocated.
No worries. Yeah, we can make that update.
Is that it, Paul?
That's it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Any questions for census?
Okay. Move on. All right, we will open and close the public comment section, which leads us to the final item on the agenda, and that's a motion to adjourn. Do I have such a motion?
This is Katie Boskin, so moved.
Thank you, Katie.
I'll second.
Thank you. We will do this by voice. All those in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Everyone.